Hi, it's Debbie here. Just a quick note before we start. Like so many of our listeners, we're processing what we've been seeing on the news this week. We're thinking about all the innocent lives lost, all those who are injured, and those who have nowhere to turn. In regards to this episode with the inspiring Rachael Ray, I just wanted to make a note that this was recorded before the attacks on October the 7th. We hope that Rachel's generosity and passion to help Ukrainians can inspire us all to think about how we can help others during these times. I'm Debbie Travis.
And I'm Tommy Smythe.
And this is Trust Me, I'm a Decorator. So I just want to open this up with saying thank you so much for joining us. Now, you're coming out of your Tuscan kitchen to chat to us. I hope you're cooking up a storm.
I am. Well, actually, it's a very little storm. Most times that we have, I call them family dinners, but most nights that we do family dinners, 2 days ago, I did one for 18. Most nights it's for a lot of folks. Today, we're just having 2 plus us, so that's only 5. So it's really kind of baby steps. But if I have 5 people, it's the equivalent of cooking for 15. When I have 18, it's like cooking for 40. And people take home boxes stacked taller than my head.
Are you always cooking?
Always, of course, it's my chosen profession. It's how I grew up. My mother paid me under the table from the time I was 12 years old. So I have been in restaurants or in service to people and cooking for them. What am I now? 55 years old. So over 40 years. Yeah, it's all I do.
Do you dream about recipes at night?
Yeah, no, I write around the clock. But because of the SAG strike, I have all these new jobs. I have 6 different shows and a podcast, but I can't work on any of them because I can't book anything because everybody's on strike. So
Right.
I feel very frustrated. So of course I invite over every single person I know in the entire region, the entire province of Siena, just come eat. And we do these big family dinners several times a week.
Well, that's the Tuscan way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's occupational therapy.
Yes, exactly. Recreational therapy. No, but it's my same way in the States too. That's just who I am. That's like my personality. And when I'm not cooking food, I'm painting food or drawing food or writing cookbooks. I've written like close to 30. And I paint and draw food too.
Do you?
I call them foodles.
Foodles.
Oh my God.
That's brilliant.
So, Rachel, first of all, I want you to meet Tommy. Tommy's my co-host.
Hi, Tommy.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Tommy's a lucky name for me. One of my dearest friends, Tommy Crudup, he's producing my podcast called I'll Sleep When I'm Dead.
That's amazing.
And Tommy is Billy Crudup's brother. And I love them both so much. They're like family members to me. So Tommy's a lucky name. So I love you already. I love that you were sitting in the dark. That's pretty fun and cool. That's usually
always
me.
sitting in the dark. That's what I said to him. You need to get out of the closet.
I'm in Toronto, Canada, and it's early in the morning and it's so dark here. But Rachel, you and I have a couple of mutual friends in Jen Gorder and John Gidding.
Oh, yes!
I wanted to tell you have for years told me the most wonderful and lovely things about you. And I've been looking forward to meeting you because they have said such nice things. Your show was their favorite show to do and they adore you. So
I bribe people with food, you know.
Well, they're both good eaters.
And you know, I've always had a mad crush on John Gidding. And you know, I call him Giddy Up. Did he tell you?
Oh, yeah. No. And listen, John and Jen can both get it. I think they're both stunning. I can't even, like when they're together, I can't take my eyes off them. It's insane. They're just such beautiful people inside and out.
No, they're great. I love them too. You know, we're going to be doing so many different types of programming now, and I'm very excited about that.
Good.
But there are certain aspects that I'll always miss about, 17 years of doing that type of programming. There's things I won't miss too, just to be honest.
Of course.
Now I can be more focused on exactly what I want to say and how I want to say it with lots of different people that we're producing, not just me.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue making programs, but I'm also getting a chance to highlight people I really want the world to meet in very specific areas. And the podcast thing, I got to tell you, I already filmed one. I'm not going to say who it is.
Yeah.
Very, very uber famous person who
Mhm.
came here to my home and was here for a few days. I just adore this human being. And we did our first one, and then the strike happened.
Ah,
We were going to start streaming them in September. And of course, we can't
yeah.
because the strike happened. I'm a member of SAG. So,
Mhm.
but wow, that first one, it's waiting to go, baby.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
So, Rachel, you're not far from me. Tommy's in Toronto. I'm in Tuscany. You're in Tuscany, at the other side of the famous Val d'Orcia from me. When did you move there?
Wow, that's a whopper of a question. So during the pandemic, my main home in upstate New York, where I largely grew up, when I was very, very little, I lived in Massachusetts, in Cape Cod. But then we had 2 gas crises back to back, and no one could afford to go there anymore. So my family went bankrupt. Our family restaurants we had to sell. My mom went to work for other people in upstate New York. So I moved to upstate New York. In upstate New York, my husband and I built a big home together. I had a home before the one we ended up building after years of knowing each other. I had a little rent to own, $575 a month on 3.5 acres, with an indoor fireplace and an outdoor fireplace. Only one toilet. I mean, it's upstate New York,
Yeah.
but this little cabin. And I worked in very successfully in New York City for many years as a food buyer and running marketplaces. But then I was mugged twice.
What?
So I left New York because I just thought I was going to die soon. And once I moved back to upstate New York, that's where I started a cooking class to sell groceries at the market I was working at, called 30-Minute Meals. That became television shows for the Food Network and
Yes,
other things.
I remember.
Yes. So it's a long, weird way to get a job, but that's how it happened. I love to write. I love to draw. I always have since I was a little girl. My grandfather was one of 14. My mother is one of 12. 10 lived. She's the firstborn that survived. You know, Sicilians. What do you?
Yeah, big families.
Yes. So my grandpa lived with us when I was a child. And that was my love of cooking and growing food and knowing where food comes from and what the circle of life is and how to be responsible in a kitchen and in your garden. All of that came from that multi-generation upbringing that I was lucky enough to have. And my mama lives across the street from me when we're in upstate New York. She has her own home that's like big. She's never there. She's always in my old little cabin across the street. She just prefers it. She likes to watch the animals. She has cats and she likes to watch we have a lot of animals. She likes to watch the wild turkey and the grouse, the little fat round hens, and all of the multiple types of deer and the fat porcupines and the fat little roly-poly mountain bears. And
Oh my gosh, beautiful.
it's like she lives in the zoo.
Yeah.
So she prefers being at my little tiny cabin that I bought for $111,000 rent to own gajillion years ago. She prefers to be there than in her giant, beautiful house that's only a few minutes away. My sister stays there most of the time because my mother rescued a mother and her 6 kittens from a abandoned construction site in the middle of winter a gajillion years ago. And that mom and all of her kids live in my mother's house instead of my mother.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So my sister, who helps us make the TV show, because when we film upstate, it's just us. It's just myself and my husband. Maria will go find an obscure ingredient, and she has like a whole network. And she does all the baking on our show, on what was the daytime show. And she's included in all of the work we're going to be doing going forward. She's a big part of that, a big presence in it. So we're all together a lot. We're like a weird cult, but we don't live together. We live almost apart, but not very far from each other.
That's the best way.
Yes, it is the best way. So yeah, there you go. So the new hybrid is I'm going to produce some people in a studio format. A few of the talents that I'm producing, we're going to shoot in a studio because that's their preference. They think it's going to be easier for them. And I'm going to be shooting from here in Tuscany and from my home in upstate New York. And we're going to have some surprise guests all over the place in different places. And the podcast, we have a music studio because my husband is a lawyer by day, but a musician by night. And we have a huge professional studio, soundboard, the whole thing, both here in Italy and in upstate New York. So we can also do the podcast from both places. So we have a lot coming up. We're just waiting for all of the kind of dust to settle.
And have you got a fabulous kitchen in Tuscany?
Yeah, it doesn't suck. Yeah.
That's to be expected from Rachael Ray for sure.
We actually have 2 kitchens here because the house is actually 2 structures. And by law here, you cannot touch any structure that was photographed or drawn. You can't change the original structure itself for obvious reasons. These are hundreds of years old and they're a huge part of history and blah, blah. So you can only build out the insides. But when I picked this property, my husband said, honey, there's things that are for sale all over the place. They say vendese for sale. And they actually have water and electricity.
That would help.
All these novelty items.
This place had none of that. It had carcasses of animals and just kind of general filth.
Yeah.
But I'm buying this property, and it is 66 hectares of perfectly kept vineyards with mostly Sangiovese and a tiny bit of Syrah, and perfectly kept olive trees. The family wanted no part of the little villa structures that are here that I turned into our home. So they had been let go. So I thought, what a bargain. I get all of this and I have grapes that I can make proprietary wine with. I just have to pick my partner and put my grapes into the community. And I have these beautiful olive trees and I can make gallons and gallons of olive oil. And I have every type of fruit tree. And it's amazing.
It sounds beautiful.
And because there was no running water and like no actual home, it was a great deal. So I thought.
But that's often the way, isn't it? It's because in Tuscany, the land is what they love, the farmers. And often these beautiful houses, which we, like you say, hundreds and hundreds of years old, are where they keep all their farm equipment and dead carcasses. They don't care. They care about the land. And so their olive trees will be in perfect condition, but the ceilings have all fallen in.
Oh, I didn't have any. Please. This ceiling, the room I'm sitting in, there's 2 structures here. One was the stable keeps where he lived. Again, no electricity, no running water, no nothing. There's just a wood burning oven, a huge wood burning oven. But he used to sleep on top of the oven once he was done making food because it would keep him warm in the winter.
Wow.
I know. It's hardcore, man. Yeah, this is hardcore. So we started this project. My second dog, Isabu, was still alive. She came here 3 times. She died when she was 16. We had to go back home. The pandemic began. They closed our show down, and we had to fulfill the rest of the contract for the year. So John and I moved to our home in upstate New York across the street from the little rent-to-own house. We built a big house. on a piece of property that we got for a great price, very big, 199 acres. And we built this lovely place that I drew the original sketch for on a piece of notebook paper.
Okay, we'll add architect to Rachael Ray's resume now.
I'm not an architect. There are some things that didn't work out, like the upstairs guest room. You couldn't have a full-length closet because of the ductwork that needed to happen. You could only bring like short pants and folded sweats. Yeah,
That's all you need in Tuscany.
but it was a really pretty house, right? So we go home and we have to start working from home. And I've always been a buggy person about. I do unscripted television, and I tell people everything. I tell them every weird story and all kinds of things on the show. So I felt like our home upstate was like, no one can come here, just the close people that we invite that are like family to us. So when we started to film there, it was really horrifying to me. Like it frightened the pants off me.
Because it's worlds colliding, right? It's your personal life overlapping with your professional life in a way that it hadn't before.
Exactly.
And that's so hard. It's so hard.
I wrote an entire book about it. This must be the place. I love David Byrne, so the reference is obvious there. So while we're working there, our home burns down.
I read about that.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry.
And our house burns into the ground.
How did the fire start?
It was creosote, it's called. It's a buildup in your chimney. And I had my chimney cleaned twice a year. And it spit up on the roof, and the roof caught fire. Like we just built a fire because it was a cool evening. And the fire kind of like had a burp. And the ember fell on the roof, and the roof caught fire, and the house burned into the ground.
Heartbreaking.
I'm so sorry. And I'm so glad that you were all safe. I remember reading that your family was safe.
My mom lives across the street, so in my original cabin. So I was worried that the fire was going to go down the hill.
Sure.
And did she watch the fire? Did she see the fire?
We all did. Adjacent to where my mom was living, we bought this tiny little patch of land through a weird set of circumstances. And we weren't ever planning on building on more land. We bought this tiny little patch of land and we built a guest house there. And that's where we ended up living for 2.5 years. And we filmed over 220 or 30 shows there.
Wow.
Just the two of us and the puppy. So after my dog died in my arms in my backyard, she's buried up above our property, the big house. Then our house burned down and into the ground. Then we adopted Bella Boo Blue. And Bella had only been with us a few weeks. And then the house burned down. We took her across the street in our flip-flops. We had no clothes, no underwear, nothing. We had nothing. The house went so fast. It was just gone. And I was teaching a children's program, a cooking camp online while the house was burning down. And I had the final episode coming up. I had all these guest chefs, so many of my friends from over the years at Food Network, and just all the world's greatest chefs, teaching kids how to cook one thing or another thing. And the last show was coming up, and everybody offered, Emerald, so many people, they said, I'll teach the last class. I'll teach the last class. And I'm like, no, I promised the children I would be here. It was 2 or 3 days after my house burned that I did the final class. And it was a meat alternative spaghetti and meatballs for kids that were vegan or vegetarian. Weird. In borrowed clothes and no makeup in a guest house. And we had 10,000 families tune in for it. It was pretty
That's incredible. Now, Rachael, I wanted to sort of mention, I think, I know that Debbie and I have been talking about your recent event that happened in Florence. And I wondered whether this kind of incredible loss, you've always been associated with charitable organizations. You've always done a lot of volunteer work.
My husband and I created our entire brand to feed children to bring better food into public schools. It's the only fair game place where you can reach every child and give them food security. And then we did the same model that we used for humans and children. We used that as our model for animal food and for animal rescue.
Bravo.
And our foundation, I think we've given away over $85 million so far with all of our efforts.
I sort of wondered whether, losing your own home in such a, sudden and violent way would, connect you even more deeply to the kinds of causes that you align with on a human level. Because I know you spent a lot of time in Ukraine.
Well, that's always been there years and years and years before I understood Ukraine, and the conflict there. This is what we based our entire business on for the last 20 years almost now, 18, 19 years now.
That's a beautiful thing.
So our commitment has always been, and I was taught this by people like Oprah, President Clinton, all kinds of people, John McCain, conservatives, liberals. I always ask people, how do we give back in an appropriate way? Because most people say, well, what can I do? And there's never an answer. I watch mountains of news. I read, I know that's a weird word. I still read
Yeah,
4-letter word. I read books, newspapers, and I am a student. I know I'm 55, but I always consider myself every day an opportunity to be a student of the world. And I want to learn something every day, and I want to be correct about it. Is this factual information, or is this hate mongering or propaganda? What's true? And how do we get to the core of that? It's not an easy job, by the way.
No, it's a big job. We're just going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Sarah Burke, and I host the Women in Media podcast, where I'm exploring the challenges women face in the media spotlight and celebrating our triumphs. My guests come from radio, TV, news, and sports, and we'll cover topics like leadership, diversity, stereotypes, and more. Most of all, I'm looking to build a community through a space where we can discuss anything. The Women in Media podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or at womeninmedia.ca.
Rachel, what brought you the first? You've been 5 times to the Ukraine.
You can't watch something that is so wrong happen in front of your eyes, whether you're reading it or watching it literally live time, on video. At least I couldn't. I could not stand to watch any more of this and not ask, what can I do? And you will not believe the explanation to this. It's incredible. When we got Bella, we rescued. She was in 2 foster homes, and we got her on the last day she was going to be kept in her shelter. She unfortunately was in a kill shelter. Now, no one that works in a kill shelter wants to kill animals. Of course, they love animals. But many communities throughout the country, they just can't sustain that. And we try and rescue with North Shore Animal League America. We try and rescue animals from these places before it's too late. It was her last day, and I saw this little picture of the saddest eyes I've ever seen in my life. Giant blue eyes, giant white chest. Her mother was a red-nosed pit bull, and her father was a Weimaraner. So she's blue fur, white giant pit bull chest, giant blue eyes. She looked like David Bowie and Amon's love baby. I'm like, I desperately need to bring this dog home. So that's how we got her. And, if you are always into this mode where you're affected by animals, you're affected by humans that are suffering, you're affected by people that are victims of circumstance. They, the horrible storms, climate change, what have you. I don't know how to explain it. You can't not try and do something. So when we got Bella, we couldn't take her for a walk in New York City or take her to a park or a doggy training center. You couldn't go anywhere. It was a pandemic. So this woman, Elizabeth Lajeunesse, has this brilliant center called Dog Logic. She has literally written a book about dogs and their sense of logic and how they think and how to train them and how to be appropriate for each breed. Do they need to work on their hips because they're going to have hip dysplasia, which is the category that my dog is in? Or do we need to make their upper body stronger? Do we need to work on focus and keeping the dog calm or more friendly to other dogs, blah, blah. So this woman, her brother works for a Republican who goes back and forth, had just returned from Ukraine. And I'm talking to her about how I want to do something for Ukraine. She says, my brother right now is working in politics, and it's a bipartisan trip he just went on with Amy Klobuchar. And, it was Republicans and Democrats together. They just returned with the UCCA, the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. They just came back from Ukraine. I think I know people that can help you if you want to go to Ukraine to help Ukrainians. So
Amazing.
This is how I meet Henri Fouté, through the lady who helped me train my rescue dog after my dog died and my house burned down. This is how I got to Ukraine. Is that not nuts?
That's
nuts. Absolutely nuts. But it's often the way things work out, isn't it? I mean, it's just, if you're looking at your life from above, all these little threads are coming together.
That's right. And your life is a quilt. Your life is a quilt.
It's a quilt. Absolutely. So when you first went, tell us,
I said, what can I do? What can we bring? So the most urgent need was frontline kits for saving limbs, basically. There's 17 elements involved in each kit. And I bought $100,000 worth on our first trip. Again, none of this can come out of our foundation. This is my husband and myself. Honey, I'm going to take a rather large withdrawal this week from the bank.
Yeah.
I need some money.
We bought about $100,000 worth of these kits, 17 elements. I think the most special element in these kits, they're tourniquet kits, basically, so they can save limbs and organs because everyone that's in Ukraine, these are not soldiers solely. These are doctors, engineers, your next door neighbor, grandmothers throwing tomatoes at drones. Like, this is everyone.
And children.
Children fighting for democracy itself. The children are the victims. They're not out there with machine guns, at least. I didn't see that. But every single person here is fighting just for the right to exist and be a democracy. They're protecting all of us, everyone in the world that believes that democracy, small d, is the way to go. That's what's at stake here. And these folks have put literally their lives and limbs on the line for all of us. So we started on that first trip with a plan to get these kits built out. We build them out in warehouse space with a whole team and network of people that keep us safe when we're there. And the most special thing in the kit is this gel stuff that draws all the blood that's left in your body if you've been shot or hit by missile fire. It draws all the blood to that limb or to wherever the injury is so that you don't lose that organ or that piece of your body. And then they tie it off, of course, and there's all sorts of other components to the kit. 17 built to NATO standards, 17 in every kit. Now we also provide all sorts of different gear for different seasons because it gets brutally cold, and they have to deal with horrible mud. There's all kinds of circumstances we try and deal with. Separately, we went to the children's orphanage, and I met Father Andri at the San Bosco orphanage, which is also a training center, a training facility that gives children 5 different programs they can learn until they're 18 years old. They can get their skills, like what we used to call in America a BOCES training program. They can learn to be an engineer or a chef or work in hospitality, blah, blah. Father had this made for me, gave it to me. This is the symbol of Ukraina, of Ukraine. And I have 3 Andris, the mayor of Lviv, the father at the children's orphanage, and my friend Andri Fute, who brings me back and forth and gets me in and out safe every time we go. And so we took this symbol and this example of Ukrainian art, and we gave it to my friends in Tuscany at Dobrena, Sebastian and his wife Megan, and they started creating this jewelry. I was already designing jewelry with them and for them, just because I like to draw and I doodle constantly. I don't just do foodles, I do jewelry doodles too. So we were already going to work together. This is in Cortona, this jewelry shop. You can order them any place on the planet Earth, and they put Rachael Ray on the back, the symbols on the front, and we have many different styles in silver and in gold. And the proceeds from this go to help the rehabilitation center in Ukraine. Unbroken is the center that we're working on right now. I go to the children's hospital, which is here. And then next door, this is separate from the orphanage, next door to the children's hospital is this huge rehabilitation center that Andriy Sadovi, the mayor, has been working on for 10 years. You know, Americans think this conflict is young, 1.5, 2 years is their awareness of it. It's not. This is a decade of people losing land and losing traction, and Putin trying to reclaim old Mother Russia by annihilating free people that, you know, they chose to live in a democracy. And he's been trying to break that down since they started to build it. So it's a very skewed view. And it's just so beautiful that so many people are trying to help us in any way, shape, or form. And the monies that we're trying to collect now are for our biggest project yet. My husband and I have bought a microscope, some cataract surgery, eye equipment for the hospital. We have purchased these frontline kits. We've built out the entire cooking center at the orphanage. I bought, 15 different cooking stations there, 15 different stoves. We did all of the electricity. We did the ventilation. It's just growing and growing in such a beautiful way. But the exciting thing that we're working on right now is at Unbroken. Unbroken is the name of this giant facility next to the children's hospital that has been this decade-long dream of my other Amri. So at this center, it's going to have a maternity center. It's going to have a mental help for all, for PTSD and just trying to rejoin society. They have a special training facility where everything is color-coded, where people that have lost limbs and been through severe brain trauma can learn how to live again on their own in an apartment. Everything's color-coded, and it's like a training apartment. We have water facilities where you can be lifted in if you've lost your legs or some of your body parts or your limbs. There's a special treatments that we give in this giant pool facility. We have an actual robot that you can put people that have lost their limbs to train them how to walk again with prostheses. They get inside this giant machine and they load in what's left of their limbs, and the machine walks them uphill and downhill and flat. And it teaches their bodies how to reacclimate to what their life will be next. I mean, it's so overwhelming.
It's absolutely overwhelming. Rachel, how much do you need to raise to get Unbroken off the ground?
Well, what we're trying to do now is build out a main kitchen. They don't have a kitchen. There's 4,000 to 5,000 beds a day that are occupied and will be occupied even more so as the center builds out in every single phase. So they need one kitchen that will feed 4,000 to 5,000 people a day. When we started with WCK, my dear friend Jose Andres. My husband came with me our first trip. He worked with me at the World Central Kitchen on the Polish border as all the people, millions, were crossing into Poland, and they were trying to care for all these folks. I have literally cooked for 5,000 people a day alongside my husband and friends of mine, dear friends of mine, for many hours a day. So we're trying to build a kitchen that looks a lot like what Jose was brilliant enough to create and that they recreate all over the world where it's needed. We're trying to build out a kitchen that has huge, they're like giant paella pans, these huge pieces of equipment that can make borscht, soup, all kinds of hot food. And then cold stations and giant sandwich stations so we can produce 3 meals a day for 4,000 to 5,000 people 3 times a day. That's our goal. The budget is about $250,000 to $300,000, which I think is pretty cheap considering what we're finding.
I was going to say, that's not so bad.
Not so bad at all. I know people who have tiny restaurants and it's cost them millions to build them,
Yeah.
It's not a ton of money. However, it's a little bit much of a lift. My poor husband, I just go, and we try and do it ourselves. I think he would actually maybe leave me. I'm thinking not. But, we've already done five times. And every time I go, I always buy something for the kids at the orphanage. We always bring toys or treats or anything they want. We've bought them ice cream machines, to book bags and school supplies. And, every time we go, it's something else. We've gotten a floor cleaner for the father. He really wanted something to clean the floors.
Amazing.
But we're trying to get a little bit of help and support when it comes to raising funds so that we can all share the burden. But more importantly, people will ask you, what is that symbol you're wearing around your neck? What is that that funny thing you're wearing on your wrist? And what I'm trying to do is keep Ukraine on everyone's lips and in their hearts and in their minds. That's the number one goal for me.
Keep the conversation going.
It's not just about dollars. It's about, are you discussing this? Are you sharing information with friends and saying, we should keep these people and the people that represent us? We're constituents, right? We all have representatives. We have to keep it important to the people that we elect, and we have to keep it important to our neighbors that we support these folks.
Let's just talk about how everybody listening can help on whatever little level. So Del Brenner are friends of mine too, and that's how you and I met. So Del Brenner it's like a 3rd, 4th generation jewelry maker. So they're beautiful pieces. You've designed this series of necklaces.
Well, we designed. Sabi is really the brilliant guy there, right?
Yeah. But they are gorgeous because we saw they were, we all had them on Tuesday.
Yes.
And, this week when we were all got together. And Christmas is coming, holidays are coming, and you're right, because it is something that people could wear and then people can say, it just brings attention. Where did you get that? What is it? And they are extremely beautiful.
And it's every shape and size. It's silver, it's gold, it's for men, it's for women, it's for old, it's for young.
And it's called Where Hope Help Ukraine.
And, people can, there's three things. They can go to Del Brenna, of course. They have a huge portion of their site dedicated to this project. And you can see all of the products there, beautifully shot in like an amazing villa, with gorgeous models. I mean, my goodness, really.
It was me and you.
Yeah. And also, you can always give to Unbroken directly through the UCCA and just the Unbroken website. It's very easy to find all of these things online immediately. They're in front of your face. But the most important thing is free. You can, if you can afford to do any of that, that's terrific. Or you can afford to give a friend a small gift or a small token that happens to include remembering these people. That's awesome. A lot of people, especially around the holidays, might not have extra money. Maybe they just want to give $5 to Unbroken, or they want to just keep the words on their lips and just have a conversation with people that you respect and care about and share your thoughts. Read up on what's going on in Ukraine and
stay aware
about the first family and what they're going through. And, the first children that I met there, we were talking about this at the event the other night. The first family that I met at the Children's Hospital was a mother and her twins. The little boy had been unharmed because he stayed inside the train station that was hit by that giant missile strike. All women and children were standing outside. The grandmother, the mother, and her daughter were standing outside waiting for the train to come and for news about when it was going to arrive. The little boy stayed inside to protect and guard the luggage. The grandmother was blown to bits. The mother lost her leg, and her daughter lost both legs. And the day I met these children, I told you this story the other night. The day I met these children was the first day I went to the Children's Hospital on my first trip. The little girl with no lower limbs lost her legs at her knees, both of them. Her legs were bandaged and hanging off the edge of her bed. And she was painting a picture. And when I first met her, she asked me, "Do I look okay? Are my earrings in straight? Because they don't get visitors." And there was a man, I forget who he worked for, one of the major AP or something, Associated Press, I think he was, but he was from Spain. But he was filming the hospital, and he followed us into the room. And she saw the camera and got nervous, and she's like, "Do you like my picture? I wish I had stronger colors." And then she asked me if her earrings were in straight. And I asked Mom, "How is she doing?" And she said, "I have my children here, so I'm okay." She had one leg. And the little boy was doing a toy that someone had gifted him that had some, it was like a sort of a electrical experiment to try and get the thing to light up. And I said, "How are you doing? Do you like this toy?" And he said, "I wish it was Minecraft."
Oh.
So after we left the hospital that day, we were going to meet the mayor, and we were a few minutes early for that. And as I'm walking towards City Hall, we passed this toy store that looked like the old FAO Schwartz. It's huge.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
And there was Minecraft in the window.
Okay.
And we went and bought tons of paints and tons of Minecraft and sent it the biggest set of Minecraft they had and a couple of sets of strong color paints.
Wow.
And the mayor's office representative who was guiding us around got it back to the children immediately. And the children took pictures of their toys. and sent me their photo. And they said, lots of people tell us they're going to do things for us and they never do.
Oh, heartbreaking.
They were so happy.
Rachel, it's so heartbreaking. It's so overwhelming for anybody listening, because you're right. You don't know what to do. You really don't know how to help. And these stories are getting lost a little bit now in the news. And I think what you're doing, you're talking to Tommy and I, we can help in our tiny, wee little way in the world. And I think everybody listening can help in their way. And even if it's just being more aware. I mean, I'm finding it quite hard to speak, but because it's so upsetting. But
yeah, you just have to talk to each other and keep these folks, again, in your hearts, on your lips, and in your mind. We really all owe them such a huge debt, such an enormous debt.
Well, and thank you, Rachel, for allowing us an opportunity to be with you today and talk about it, because I think, this message of keeping the conversation going is so vitally important. And you have spent a lifetime and a career gathering people together. And if each of us, according to our means, can donate, but those who can't can just simply at the dinner table, when gathering with family, coming up into the holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah ahead of us, to be able to just keep this conversation going at dinner tables, what could be more Rachael Ray than that? Gather around food, talk about issues that are human and that connect us all in a global way, and keep the conversation going. So thank you for allowing us to do that here. I feel very emotional too.
Me too.
Make a borscht party.
We're all crying. we're all crying. It's very Italian, actually, what's happening. We're all in tears.
I'm making a hell of a borscht, let me tell you.
I bet.
Rachel, just to cheer us all up, tell us what you're making tonight. What are you cooking, just to cheer us up?
Yes, tell us what's for dinner.
Tonight is a scampi. I just made the reduced shrimp stock. You toast the heads and the shells and make a reduced stock. And I use dry vermouth in mine and lemon butter to finish. So we're making a big scampi. We're making sliced bistecca, sliced steaks with arugula. So tagliati, basically. Tagliata is sliced steak with greens and buttery olives and toasted walnuts. And charred lemons squished all over the top. And I made a roast cherry tomato and eggplant sauce from our garden, from our orto in the backyard. And we'll toss that with some rigatoni. We're doing some baked pears with soft pecorino and some truffle onion jam on top. My sister made a beautiful fig tart from our fig trees. We got a lot of food.
Nobody's going to be hungry, that is for sure, at your house tonight. We're going to attach links to all of the organizations that Rachel is so heroically helping around the world, and especially in Ukraine. And we're going to have all of that on our website attached to this podcast episode. And Rachel, it's been a long time dream of mine to meet you. You certainly don't disappoint. You're everything that I'd hoped you would be. And thank you for being so wonderful and for all that you do. I loved having this conversation with you.
Well, we have a lot of new projects coming up. So you guys call me whenever. And honestly, thank you guys for making the time and putting a spotlight on this. I worry so much. I worry all the time that we're losing the light on such an important thing for the world.
And you're shining a light. You are shining a light.
Because of you guys. Thank you. It's such a generous thing you're doing. Thank you.
All right, my love. We'll chat soon. Come over and see me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, and big hugs to our audience during this time. We hope to have distracted you or inspired you in some way today. As Rachel said, keep those suffering in your hearts, on your lips, and in your mind.
This podcast is distributed by the Women in Media Podcast Network. Find out more at womeninmedia.network.